Unfiltered opinions.
Introduce me.
Sometimes you have ideas and you're not quite sure why.
As you secure the bag.
Sometimes you meet people and realize there's probably a reason why you stayed in touch.
Just listen.
Sometimes all the pieces just come together by themselves.
I'm Jimmy Moyaha.
And I'm Simon Brown.
Welcome to Insider Exchange.
And in our deep dive this week, we are taking a look at paying down your debts and potentially using methods like debt consolidation. Does it really work? Does it make sense? Which might be options that you could potentially explore if debt consolidation is not an option? Obviously, this is not financial advice. As we have said, we have a disclaimer at the start of our show. We have a disclaimer at the start of our videos. And we will add a disclaimer to our audio as well in case people want to go that route. This is not financial advice. These are the opinions of two gentlemen who have way too much time on a Monday morning and want to share those opinions with you. The issue of debt is a painful one for everyone, ourselves included. I mean, whether you're in a debt situation, whether you've gotten out of a debt situation, there's a story, there's an ongoing story, there's a previous story, there's always an experience where it comes to this. And I've seen that a lot of the comments or the searches or the insights that people are looking for at the moment is how to clear it. So we've come out of a pandemic. We've come out of probably the worst 5 years that people have experienced in the last 50 years in terms of volatility, uncertainty, banks changing policies, everything you can imagine that could have taken place has taken place, short of a recession, which is not far off at this point, right? Mm-hmm. And in all of that, people have made different decisions. People have decided to relook at their lives, reevaluate what's important, how to prioritize, and all of that. And paying down debt seems to come up over and over and over as something that people would like to kind of get done and get it done right. Now, I don't think there is a right way to do it. I think there is a way that lines up with your circumstances that could be beneficial to you, but I don't think there is one silver bullet that then says, hey, this is it.
I think you're right. I absolutely. I think it depends on levels of debt, depending also what the debt is, depending on are you struggling to pay or are you not paying. Those are two different processes. How much it is, et cetera, those sort of things. So I mean, ultimately, we often talk in fairly broad sort of strokes around things. I mean, as we did, what was it, just last week around credit scores and the like. It is unique to everyone. And I think debt even more so. And of course, the thing with debt, a credit scores emotionally, that has but debt is a different story. Debt is it can become emotional. It can be, it can really stress you.
Absolutely. Probably one of the most stressful things that you go through as an adult. I think back to anything you can really think of. Nothing compares to debt in terms of stress levels.
Yeah.
Nothing compares.
Yeah.
So it's not even right up there. It is up there. It is the one thing, right? And if you can somehow manage to get out of it, and the challenge there then becomes not slipping back into it and all of those sorts of things, right? So it's one of those traps that is very difficult to get out of. And when you see the difference that it makes out of it, it's a completely different story, because you start to think about things like the compounding effect, right? So I look at it from the perspective of something like black tax, which has always been a sensitive topic for those that are experiencing it, for those that go through it. But effectively, if you are starting off your life journey in debt because you don't have the savings, because you weren't passed down the car that someone else may have been passed down, because you didn't have a one-bedroom apartment as a start off your life, you already start off 100 steps back before. Because those
and you're
are
not
not
even
things,
talking around education.
That's
and
it. Not even talking about school fees, varsity fees, and all of that, because those are not things that you have the luxury of saying these are luxuries. A roof over your head for some people is not a luxury. A vehicle to get to work for some people is not a luxury, because you might work far away from your workplace and it might not be practical to take public transport. So say, for example, you work in a call center and you work nights. You can't be relying on taxis at 1 o'clock in the morning when your shift ends. So sometimes these things are necessities. And the banks don't look at you and say, oh, you're a first timer. This is a new thing for you. Let's take it easy on you. No, they're after their profit no matter what.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it is, I agree with you. There are, I was going to say in South Africa, and probably we are unique in some ways, but there are different people are in different parts of their process, and some people are absolutely 100 steps behind. And typically, they are poorer, often more rural, and that just perpetuates the challenges. I mean, it just doesn't go away. You start 100 steps behind, it means your kids start 1,000 steps behind.
Absolutely. It becomes a generational thing.
Yeah.
So when you look at things like debt consolidation, that becomes something that you consider. You then look at your situation and you say, perhaps if I lump together everything using one new debt, then everything, can go away and all of that. Now, the interesting thing about that is that there are good and bad reasons to potentially consider that, right? And I want to look at that. I want to start by looking at some of the good that can come from it.
Well, in the simplest sense, you've got a whole bunch of loans, some of them store cards, credit cards, whatever they might be. You're probably not going to consolidate a home loan because you're not going to get cheaper. You might consolidate a car loan as well. You've got a whole bunch, and it's just different people phoning you, different interest rates. If you can consolidate into perhaps a lower rate and a longer term, you can reduce you can get to a monthly payment which is affordable for you. So in other words, you can manage your day-to-day living, and then you've kicked the can down. 100% you have, but sometimes that's what we need to do in life to make it really work, and it does. The point is, you take all those different loans, you borrow a pile of money, you pay them off. You don't get more money. You just get the money you owe. You owe 10 grand, you borrow 10 grand. You pay off all those different loans. You still owe 10 grand, but now it's to one supplier. You can potentially get a better rate, and you could potentially also get a longer term, which means that let's say you were having to pay $800 a month and you were struggling. Now you can pay $600 a month. You're not struggling. Instead of being maybe a 2-year repayment, and the math don't add up because I'm making up numbers as I go along. Instead of being a 2-year repayment, maybe it's a 3-year repayment, and that just gives you that extra $200 a month, which might be the breathing space you need. Challenge is to not get back into debt, but that's the bad side of it. So I think, and as opposed to debt counseling, which is a different story. Debt counseling is not consolidation. Debt counseling is this will protect your credit record because you're not defaulting on debts, you're paying them. So you pay off all those little monies, so your credit record comes out of it looking a whole lot better. Your creditors, people you owe money to, are a whole lot more smiley at you, and you've maybe got a little bit of wiggle room in your month to month.
But there are downsides,
Sure.
right? And for example, from a debt counseling perspective, you now have to declare that to a future creditor that you are under debt review, you are under debt counseling and all of that. And that then could negatively impact how that future creditor might look at your situation, right?
Sure.
Because then they might look at, so you become a higher risk from that perspective. On the side of debt consolidation as well, there are downsides to that as well. And chief among them is that new interest that you are saying. So yes, you are getting rid of other interests, but you're entering into effectively a new credit term that is starting at a 0 point. So now you are in for a new, fresh 5-year term. If you were, for example, 2.5 years into a credit debt repayment or whatever, and that new 5-year term could potentially set you back because unlike the other forms of credit, and there are good forms of credit. I think of something like a revolving loan and something like a credit card that we've spoken about in the past. Something like the debt that's used for debt consolidation typically, not always, typically is a personal loan.
Yes.
And typically a personal loan is kind of put at an interest rate of anywhere between 20 and 30%, up to 28 to 29%. So if, for example, your credit card was being financed at 19% by the bank, and suddenly you're being financed at 27% on the new debt, you're effectively paying more interest.
You're paying more. And by kicking the duration out, you're paying more as well. So ultimately, it is going to cost you more money. And that's not insignificant or meaningless. This whole, absolutely. You're going to pay more money. The trick is, and the bank loves it, right? You got a credit card at 19 and you go to your bank and they consolidate into a 28. They're like,
happy. They're just like, this is great.
And the other problem is now your credit card's back. They don't take the credit card away from you. You need to cut it up or have the discipline or something. So what that debt consolidation does, aside from the potential rate, you will certainly end up paying more because of duration and potentially because of rates. And what it then does is it frees up your capacity to get debt. So you could, in 6 months or a year, have redone the whole thing, be back in a hole, but still have the consolidation. So it requires some really strong discipline from the individual.
And also some of it is not. So the discipline part I hear, right? But some of it is also life circumstance. So I consolidate something and the intention is to be on good footing. We do this. And then 6 months down the line, I have an unexpected bill. Something happens, the geyser bursts. I don't have the money for it. I dip into the credit card and life happens, right? That's the thing. That's the unfortunate part about it is life happens. So how do you then look at different methods if something like debt consolidation isn't an option? How do you then look at what can I do to bring down the debt, to manage the payments? One of the examples is paying off the highest interest-bearing debt first to free up more to pay off the rest. So if you, for example, are paying 700 or 800 Rand on a store account and that is whatever at 18 or 19%, but at the same time you are paying at 24% a credit card that is costing you 4,000 or 5,000 Rand a month, you might be tempted to then say, okay, can I ignore the store account for a little bit to pay down this one and try to manage it that way? But of course, the moment you start ignoring the payments, we come back to the conversation we had last week in our credit score conversation around the fact that missed payments start to negatively affect that. So how do you even get that balance?
So I hadn't even thought of that. So don't ignore anything ever, but phone the peeps and say, can I have a 3-month holiday? And you will accrue interest and it will get tagged on your credit record. But that 3-month holiday you can now use to
It's a plan.
to hit the big debt. Because what you want to do is not tackle the big debt in terms of size, in terms of interest. So let's say you're paying, I don't know, let's pick a number. You're paying 1,000 Rand on your most expensive debt, whatever that might be. If you can find an extra 200 or 300 bucks and pay that off quicker so that it goes away quicker, because that's the one costing you money. And maybe that 200 or 300 bucks comes from a side hustle. Maybe it comes from friends, family, and fools, or maybe it comes from going to Edgar's and say, guys, can I pause for a couple of months here? And oftentimes, when you owe people money, what they're terrified of is that you stop paying and stop talking. Always be talking. Engage with them. If you are phoning them and saying, hey, I'm having a problem, can I this, that, or the rest? They're just so glad that you phoned instead of them having to chase, that they are invariably going to be happy to do something. But the snowball effect is the idea that you find the big one, you put a little bit money extra every month so that it pays away quickly. And let's say you were paying 1,000 on the credit card every month, but you managed to find an extra 300. So now you're paying 1,300 on the credit card. And then, I don't know, it's gone in a period of time. In that period of time when it's gone, you've now got 1,300 Rand a month to put to your next worst and your next. So you carrying on to pay them, notwithstanding maybe you requested a holiday somewhere, but you take your most expensive in terms of interest and you nail that one. Make it gone. And then you move to the next one and the next one. It's going to take time. I mean, that's the other thing. I know someone who got into 100K debt as a young 20-year-old, just students, credit cards. I mean, fortunately, when I was a kid, credit cards were like fancy things for people who banked at Nedbank. Ain't no one else. But she got into 100K and Woolies card, all of that. And it took her about 2 years to clear it. I mean, it's not something which vanishes overnight. This is going to take some time.
I think what you said about the payment holiday is such an important thing because we don't even know that these things are options, right? So for a lot of the debt, you don't even know that you can go and have this conversation and say, can I have a payment holiday? Especially when some of the debt forces you to take out what is known as insurance, so creditors insurance and all of that. You can lean into something like that and say, hey guys, I would like to use, obviously from an insurance perspective, they have very specific conditions and terms that will allow you to access that. But that could be an option. And if you are considering all options, definitely look at that and say, can I request a payment holiday? The worst they can say is no, you cannot. But you would have asked and you could potentially find yourself better off for it. The other one that stood out that you mentioned, Sai, was around increasing income. And I think it ties in with the conversation around paying off a little bit more or topping up the payments or whatever. So increasing your payments. So let's say, for example, you take a store account where your monthly repayment is 500 Rand. Understand that store account, that minimum amount due, is in the best interests of the store, not of you. So they give you the lowest possible amount that you need to pay because they've stretched that debt as far as possible. So if your store credit amount is 500 Rand that you need to pay off, and you happen to have the ability to pay off 750 or so, pay off the 750. Don't pay the 500. We are often tempted to just say, okay, I can just pay the minimums everywhere. And that's also, again, down to circumstance. So sometimes I can't afford to top up more. I can't afford to pay more. But when you can, that additional payment simply means that when they look at your profile, because the store guys, particularly the RCS kind of loans, they assess your interest on a monthly basis. On the monthly balance equivalent. So what that means is if you're paying 500 Rand now, they take their interest portion. After their interest portion, the capital is, or a portion of the capital is settled. So let's say of the 500, 400 goes to interest and 100 goes towards the capital. If you're topping that up and paying 750, they still take only 400 for interest, but now your capital is decreasing instead of by 100 Rand by 350, right? Correct. So next month when they review it, they charge you less interest because your capital balance due to them is lower. So increasing your payments wherever possible certainly helps.
It kind of, it's why I call snowball, because it starts really slow and then it sort of really gathers momentum. And it's I said, find some extra money. I mean, there's the other things when looking at your budget is your insurer, get some competing quotes on your vehicle insurance and then go back to your insurer and say, hey, I need a cheaper rate. I mean, it's that, and you can find little bits here, there, and everywhere. I know everyone at the end of last year, beginning of this year, was going and haggling their bank for better, lower interest rates on their home loans. Now, most people get like, no, thanks, but try again. And I think you can request a review. Your bank will have a certain frequency. And some people were only getting a measly 0.1 lower, but it's 0.1 lower. To your point, it means that the interest component is less or your monthly fees are a little less. Some people got a drop of 0.25% in their home loan because when you took that home loan out, your circumstances are potentially different.
One of the other things that I found was something that a good mentor once said to me was, if you have things like a bonus coming through and you have that big lump sum and you're looking at obviously tackling the biggest debt or whatever it is, right? Before you make that debt payment, make a simple phone call, send a simple email to the creditor and say, can I have a settlement amount? Your settlement amount, 9 times out of 10, is less than what you owe in terms of the overall debt. So they give you a discounted rate on the settlement because it's early settlement. It means they get to recover their money sooner, which means they also don't get to charge you interest for the full term.
And it removes the risk.
It reduces the risks from their perspective as the creditor. So now, if you are sitting there with a lump sum of cash, and you're going to pay off your credit card, or you're going to pay off this personal loan, or you're going to pay off a car loan, for example, car loans in particular, phone and say, hey guys, can I have a settlement letter or can I have a settlement amount? And as I said earlier, most of the time they would rather have you come with that as a offering than for them to have to come after you, which could also be hugely beneficial if you had anticipated that you were going to settle at a certain level and now suddenly you get to settle for less.
No, absolutely. And it's that. And it goes back to, make the calls or the emails or something, engage. Absolutely.
Very interesting thoughts. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your reflections, your experiences. Please let us know what your journeys have been like. Obviously, as we said at the start of the segment, every journey is different. Every circumstance is different. This wasn't financial advice. This was just a couple of scenarios that you could potentially explore. Hopefully one of them helps. Hopefully one of them is a guide that you can use in other areas. And we'd certainly love to hear if you have had experiences that have benefited you, where you've used a particular technique or you've used something that has allowed you to clear your debt quicker. Please share that with us. Share that in the comments. Share that in our community. We love to engage on these sorts of matters because at the end of the day, we're all better for it. We're going to leave the deep dive on that note. We're going to get into investor insights. We're going to get into some interesting announcements from the FSCA, the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. They are looking at taking a stricter stance on what is called finfluencers, which we could potentially be. To wrap things up with Investor Insights, we are taking a look at some developments from the FSCA, the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. They have issued a new conduct standard. It is the first conduct standard of 2025 that they have issued, and it relates to institutions or financial institutions in particular that are providing financial education initiatives. Now, they've issued this conduct standard as part of a broader conversation that's been happening with the FSCA. They are unhappy with the way that financial advice and financial communications are being had, and certain conversations are as a result of what has been put out there in the past. So things like finfluencers are a very hot topic for the FSCA at the moment. That is people that come onto social platforms, give financial advice or tell you that these are the financial things that you should be looking out for, and people kind of take that advice on board. Now, again, there's a reason we have a disclaimer, and that is because even though we might look like finfluencers, we work in the financial services space, we are not providing financial advice. We're sharing our opinions. The show tells you that we share unfiltered opinions, and that's exactly what they are. Opinions. Take them as opinions. If you want financial advice, we'd be happy to put you in touch with some really good financial advisors that are not us. But this is a serious thing, right? So from the perspective of protecting consumers, right, I've been a very big and very vocal advocate around this, particularly in the trading space, because I come from that trading world, and it was a very clear thing that the FSCA had been concerned about, is that there isn't enough financial education out there, and the financial education that is being provided might not be of the highest standard or of the quality that it should be. And I've been very vocal about this. I do these conversations with the FSCA quite regularly on the radio shows that we discuss the things that you need to know to protect yourself as a consumer. And this conduct standard and the way that the FSCA is looking at the financial services world, it's a very important thing at this time, because as we spoke about in the deep dive, everybody's trying to look for a way to take the pressure off from a debt perspective. And one of those ways is dabbling into the world of trading, is dabbling into the world of investments and that sort of thing. And that's a very different world if you don't have the requisite experience and you don't have the requisite knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, you remember, and these days, weirdly, it's been overtaken by betting websites.
Yes.
But there was the Telegram channels and the Facebook groups, and 201, they were nearly all scams. Some didn't start as scams. I mean, 20 plus years ago, I knew someone who started legitimately, although he wasn't fully registered. And then it turned into a scam because of circumstances. He had a bad month, he couldn't admit it, so he fudged numbers and ended up in jail, which is the right place for those people, to be clear. Not many of them get to jail, but he did. And there is, I was chatting with someone last week, and we were talking around sort of this and why aren't more people putting their $100 a month into easy equities or something? And I'm like, because we are a country of poverty. People aren't worrying about retirement. They're worried about the weekend.
Now, yes.
Yeah, and not the weekend that they want to go and drink it away. They're worried about food for the
paying
weekend.
bills, absolutely.
Transport to this and that, and trying to get a job,
getting to
etc.
work.
Yeah.
So public transport is not getting cheaper. Inflation is going up. Petrol prices are going up. It is not the cost of living in a country that has got the unemployment rate that we have, that has got the inflation and interest rate levels that we have. It's not a cheap thing, right? So we might look like, relative to other countries, we have a better quality and a better standard of living. And I believe that to a certain extent we do. But again, when you compare us to other countries, you also have to take into account the fact that our currency is 20 times weaker than a British pound, or 23 or 24 times weaker than a British pound. So we definitely have our own set of problems. Nobody's denying that. And I think that's exactly what you're saying, Sai, around the fact that people are looking for survival No one's thinking about how do we get beyond. And there is a group of people out there that take advantage of that put self-preservation above doing the right thing and above providing good information, right? And that group of people is the reason why the FSCA has their hands full with these sorts of conversations. It's the reason why you get impersonated 17 times in a month. I'm not at Simon's level of celebrity yet where I'm impersonated as often, but you get the point, right? It's that because of the vulnerabilities that exist, there are always people out there that want to exploit those vulnerabilities. And it's our responsibility as individuals to look after ourselves, to take the precautions, to educate ourselves and all of that. But I think for me, it became a personal thing when I started working in the financial space more directly and I started realizing the vulnerabilities, especially in the pandemic. I mean, the 2020 pandemic for me was quite a critical turning point because as a young 20-something-year-old in the financial services world, I had to take a decision around the kind of person I wanted to be in the world of financial markets. And I say that because it was at a time where you could very easily, like you say, set up something on a Telegram channel, it becomes a scam, you figure out how to do it, and you do those sorts of things, right? Side note, if you find anything on any social platform where I'm asking you for money or Simon's asking you for money, it's not us.
I've never slid into someone's DMs, not once.
That's it. Simon doesn't slide into DMs and neither do I. So that's what you need to be wary of. But for me, again, back to 2020, that was a critical moment for me to decide what type of person do you want to be in that space and in that world. And I did something interesting at that time was we built an online educational academy. And you know about the academy, Si. You've seen the academy. And I'm looking to change the academy at this point because I'm looking to increase the amount of accredited material that is out there. And it comes back to this thing from the FSCA around providing financial education initiatives. It's so important that you find the right kind of information.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that we are the perfect source of information, but we do our little bit in our little corner. You and I have these conversations in our little corner, and hopefully from these conversations, people can get a little bit more comfort in dealing with some of the challenges that come with navigating this financial world.
Yeah, 100%. The challenges, I mean, the regulators are slow to act on the scammers. And I also think that by moving to betting, which is an unregulated market, I've seen the adverts on the Twitters where, Sibusiso put down R5 and made 300,000. If a brokerage firm did that, they would be shut down in a minute. But the gambling site's like, yeah.
And I think that comes to another dive we're going to have at some point around either the world of gambling or the world of advertising, because there's a responsibility that sits with the Advertising Association that says promoting these sorts of things. And obviously they can easily say, oh, but these companies are regulated by the National Gambling Board and therefore we've done nothing wrong. But perhaps there should be that conversation. And you've said this before, Si. You've said that you have a particular dislike and disdain for gambling companies because they do not protect their customers, because they do not promote I don't want to say ethical practices, but they don't promote responsible practices.
And when you make money, they kick you off the platform. I mean, I know a chap who had he used to make money betting on T20 games, and he was doing really well, and he got canned. He got told, close your account, take your money, please leave. And they are, what they're doing is they're giving you that promise of not even maybe, look, turning 10 rand into 300,000 is vast riches. You're not Johan Rupert, but,
it's a life changer,
Yeah. For most people, for pretty much everyone, it's going to be a life changer, except Johan and Patrice and Dangote and others. Yeah, tax brackets. And folks who don't have tax brackets because they're rarefied air. But how many people actually win it? And there's small things. Like if you go to IG right now and you log onto their page, they will tell you that 72% of clients are short, and up there, 70% of retail accounts lose money when trading CFDs with this provider. That is a legal requirement. When I go to Betway, it's Betway now, they're not going to be telling me that. They're not going to have anything in that regard. They have their Twitter has no disclaimer whatsoever, and they're going to argue there's not enough space. And then some account has been removed because it breached community standards, which is awkward. Yeah, okay, this is weird. You won't remember the market in the 90s. I remember meeting with a bunch of guys in Durban. They were young kids. They were students at UKZN. And their fathers were working for audit firms and auditing JSE listed companies. And their fathers would, I suppose, whisper in their ear, and they would go and buy the stocks. And this was their investment club. And they invited me to their investment club the one evening, and I come all prepared, and they're like, yeah, my dad said those results are going to be good. They buy that. And I'm like, in all my hard work, they're like, well, what did your dad say? I'm like, my dad's dead. It's like, then go away. And it was, and we've come a long way to fix it. But to be clear, it's still not fixed. There are still all the challenges and messes, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it is
absolutely,
yeah.
And that's part of the danger, right? I suppose that's part of what industry needs to tackle. Obviously, various members of industry have various feelings around whether or not it's their responsibility. Some will say, look, we didn't force you to open this platform. You entered of your own free will and that sort of thing. And I suppose that's where the other side of the conversation comes in around educating yourself. The FSCA is going to run a consumer education program. They have been running several programs for the longest time. And I think we're also going to do our part in reaching out to them and collaborating with them on these sorts of things. We're going to extend an invitation to share what we can and to use our platform, the great platform that you guys have built, the audience, the community that we've built. I think it's high time we kind of all come together and promote the right sorts of conversations, the right sorts of practices. If something doesn't make sense, we kind of call it out as it should be called out. And that's also been part of the problem for many years, is we haven't called things out because at some point someone makes some money, or at some point someone says, you keep quiet, don't rat on me, so to speak. And I think that's part of the damage that's being done, right? At the end of it is people fall victim to these things because nobody's speaking out against them, and so they look legitimate. And you can make things look very legitimate. Sure. That's very easy to do, you know? If you know what it is you're looking for, what it is you're doing, you can make things look very, very fancy. But I suppose this is where conversations with people like the FSCA, with yourself, with myself, these conversations then need to take that step further to protect those out there that could potentially fall victims to these things.
Absolutely. And there is, and it's not unique to us, the rags to riches. Right? And who doesn't want to be, whatever your rags are, you wish they were better and that you were riches.
Absolutely.
I mean, even Patrice is out there saying, oh man,
my yacht is too small.
Yeah, it's got a little scratch in it. Need new yacht, need second yacht, need whatever the case may be. Weirdly, but there is a preying on that, on the people. Now, some of it is not even so much the preying of it. Some of it's just offering products which are simply not suitable. CFDs aren't suitable for most people. They're highly emotional. They can lose you lots of money and potentially more than you start with. Some of them are just out and out fraud. And we're that they are. We're calling the CFD providers fraud, but there's that person who interjects themselves in the middle who is.
But also there are some of those providers that are.
There
are providers. I mean,
Let's be clear about that.
That's it, right? So we're not absolving anyone of this. We have seen highly regulated companies come into a market, push people to go into a trade or into doing something that they are uncomfortable doing, with the promise that you will be rich, you will make your money, you will do this. When that doesn't work out, they say put more money in, you will be even richer when you recover, almost trying to promote a martingale type of strategy. And let's be clear, martingale is something that is very commonly used in a casino. So again, you're probably weighing up the same odds there. But not everyone is perfect. And I think that's I don't want to say not everyone's perfect. Let me rephrase that. Some people are genuinely out to do bad and not good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's for you to protect yourself. It's for you to look at that. And I mean, I'm sure you can tell by this conversation that we are clearly very passionate about fighting something. And at some point you also feel that you don't have the strength to fight it because it's just the two of us, right? It's just the two of us. But thankfully, the two of us now have more than 25,000 of you as part of our community. And perhaps that's it. Perhaps that's what our community is here for.
And an important point is understand how we help people around money, and it's the horse to water story. You can lead the horse to water. If you don't approach someone and say I know, and you wait for them to come to you. Make yourself known as the person who knows a little bit about the market, and make yourself known that you're happy to chat, so that when someone in your broader community, whether it be work, home, places of worship, whatever it might be, when someone in your broader community is thinking about it, or has heard something, or has seen an advert, or has been approached, someone slid into their DMs or whatever, they know to go and say, to have a word with you. Don't go to everyone and say, careful of the scams. Wait for people to approach you and then engage them. The problem is quite simple. Every time there's been a scam, Mirror Trade International,
BHI trusts,
the Ref Waynes, etc., and I expose them as scams, man, the hate that I get, the threats that I get. I mean, I was getting anonymous phone calls and people driving past my house because remember the old days telephone books which had your address? I mean, how quaint was that?
We've come a long way.
And it's in some cases it's the people who know it's a scam but like don't collapse it until I'm out. In other cases it's just people who really honestly believe it's legit. And I use every platform I've got, Mirror Trade International, and I just got hate. To a person, I got hate.
But it's what you're saying, Si. It's you can take a horse to water and can't make it drink, but there are always people that are going to be out there doing things for malicious reasons. Community out there, we will do our best where we can to see if we can help and to see if we can protect individuals. But of course, the responsibility still sits with you. If something is too good to be true, probably is. If something doesn't make sense and somehow you need to put up money to get more money, do some due diligence. Research, do some homework, look into things a little bit more, ask questions, never be afraid to ask as many questions as you want to. It is your money at the end of the day. Someone can't be forcing you to give your money until you are absolutely comfortable to do it. We are unfortunately out of time, which means we're not going to be able to get to our wall. We are going to do something quite interesting. Sai and I are going to do something very special for our community. We've got a major announcement to make around that. We might make it in the week. We might make it on next week's episode. We will keep you updated around that. It's something very special to kind of take our community through quite an interesting journey that we think might be beneficial to everybody, and we'd love to get your feedback around that. We'll keep the wall going. We'll keep adding to it and moving it around if we can. Final parting thoughts from our side to our Muslim community, which we now have seen extends to other countries outside of South Africa and the Middle East. We wish you all a pleasant Eid Mubarak. I think the next big holiday that we have coming up is Easter for our Christian communities as well. If there's something in between that we missed, I'd love to know, because I don't know if there is. I saw an interesting thing, just as a side note. Someone was saying that we're getting dangerously close to those two times kind of overlapping because of how Ramadan moves up 10 days every year and how Easter kind of sits
floats.
in the same,
I don't know.
in the
Easter
same
just
space.
Sometimes Easter's March, sometimes it's almost May.
Yeah.
This year it is the 18th through to the 21st of April.
Here's our unfiltered opinion of the week on that very note. A work week that is 3 days long, or that is 4 days long. A 4-day work week, folks. The weekend officially should start on a Friday, and not Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. A Friday should be...
So when I do my week right, my weekend starts at about 9, 10 on a Friday morning.
Okay.
And it's perfect, because then when it changes Saturday, fundamentally changes Saturday.
So that's our unfiltered opinion of the week. We all deserve a 4-day work week. We'd love for you to let us know which 4 days you would prefer. Would you want a 4-day work week that has your weekend starting on a Friday, or that has your weekend ending on a Monday? Because, as Garfield said it best, everybody hates Mondays. Until next time, investing isn't hard. Just try it.